Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome to a brand new edition of In the Shop. And I've got a good one for you today. Today, we're going to be discussing my top 5 power fishing lures for late fall, early winter fishing. For a lot of us in the country right now, it is early winter. The leaves have fallen. The mornings are cold, the water temperature has went way down, and fish have moved from their fall pattern into their winter pattern. Water temperatures, we're talking about anywhere from the high 30s to mid 40s, and it's a time of the year when fish are set up in their wintering holes, but they're still feeding. And here are my top 5 power fishing lures. Number 1, without a doubt, has to be a suspending jerkbait. A suspending jerkbait. I can't think of a better bait for this time of the year when that water temperature gets cold. Again, high 30s, low to mid 40 degree temperatures. This bait's perfect because it emulates a bait fish that's slow, sluggish, or dying. Think about that jerkbait. When you stop it, it twitches and you stop it, it just sits there. Neutral buoyancy. Slow sink, slow rise, or neutral buoyancy. And that mimics the mood of the bait fish, right? So this is number 1 for me. When I'm fishing a jerkbait in this early winter period, cadence is the most important thing. So when I cast it out, every 5 or 10 casts, I'm changing my cadence. I'll reel it, twitch, twitch, 5-second pause. Twitch, twitch, 5-second pause. I'll do that for 10 or 15, 20 casts. Then I do a 10-second pause, then a 15, and figure out what the cadence is. Generally in this early winter, slower twitches, longer pauses are really key. This is one of my favorites, by the way. This is a Rapala Shadow Wrap. It's a great 3-hooked suspending jerkbait. Perfect for this early winter period. Number 2, in the early winter period, a lot of fish relate to the bottom. They relate to the bottom. They stop actively feeding, they stop chasing, and they start foraging on the bottom. One of their top things they're eating in this early winter period are crawfish. There's no other bait that does a better job of imitating crawfish than a jig. I love a jig for this early winter. Again, water temperatures are cold. High 30s, low to mid 40s. Dragging a jig along the bottom is a great imitator of a crawfish. I'm a big fan of the compact profile jigs like this one. This is a Missile Jigs mini flip jig. I love this one. It's a 1/2 ounce, but it's a little more compact. It's smaller. And when that water gets cold and the bite tightens up a little bit, that more compact jig is perfect. With the way I fish it, just like that jerkbait, the colder the water, the slower my retrieve. So I do a lot of dragging on the bottom until I feel something. As this jig drags, if I feel it hit something, a rock, a log, a rough spot, an isolated patch of grass, I'll stop it and I'll shake it a little bit in place. So slow, methodical, bottom dragging retrieve, that's key in this early winter phase. So number 2, power fishing lures for me in the winter, early winter, it's gotta be a jig. Number 3 and number 4 are similar but different. So let's start with number 3. Number 3, I'm going with a lipless vibration bait. Lipless vibration bait. Some people call them rattle traps, but it's a lipless vibration. And too many people think that that's only a springtime lure. Guess what? Lipless vibration, it's one of my favorite lures for the early winter period. water temperatures in the high 30s to mid 40s. This is a great imitator of a shad or a minnow or a shiner that's dying. Here's the thing I want to really talk about retrieve. In the spring, I do a lot of burning. I'm burning it, rod tip high, I'm reeling it fast. But when that water temperature gets cold in this early winter period, I use the yo-yo retrieve with this lipless. And that means I cast it out, I let it fall, it sinks to the bottom, boom. Once it hits the bottom, I lift my rod, I follow my slack back down. I lift my rod, I follow my slack back down. And that bait is lifting and it's falling. It's lifting and it's falling. And that's a perfect imitator of a shad dying, a bait fish dying. And it creates a reaction strike for those cold, early winter lethargic bass. Great bait this time of the year. By the way, this one is a Rapala ripping wrap. I love it. I carry all the sizes. This size right here is a great one. Also like the number 6, the smaller guy, is a great one. Lipless vibration, number 3. Number 4, you hear me talk a lot about when that water gets cold in the early winter period, you hear me talk about the term metal. I say metal a lot. And when I talk about metal, I'm talking about jigging spoons, I'm talking about tail spinners, but specifically, look at this right here, I'm talking about this metal blade bait. They refer to them as blade baits. If you look at it, it's a hunk of metal with a little split ring on the top. And this bait is perfect when fish get tight to cover and they get deep. When they get tight-lipped, this is one of the best baits to make these fish react by power fishing, this blade bait. This one is a Trago Vibe by Mullix. If you look at this one, you can see it's super, super thin, but it's also balanced. It's very well balanced with the weight on the belly and a little flat front. And that's going to keep this bait very horizontal. The way I fish this is a lot like how I fished the lipless vibration, except my hops are a lot slower, right? Instead of that lipless vibration, I was pulling up high and letting it fall. With the Trago Vibe, I use smaller lifts and hops. So I'm letting it hit the bottom, boom. When it hits the bottom, I'm doing little subtle lifts and falls. And that's making the bait. And just like the lipless, it makes those fish react. The great thing about the Trago Vibe is you can use it in shallow water, you can use it in mid-depth, but a lot of lakes in the early winter, high 30s to mid 40s, they start to get deep. And I'm talking about 15, 20, 25, even 30 feet deep. No better bait to cover that deep water, to cover a lot of water, power fishing in early winter, than a blade bait, Mullix Trago Vibe. All right, number 5, last but not least, of my favorite early winter power fishing lures. I'm going to give you 2, but it's actually sort of one and the same. And it is a swim bait. Swim bait. You hear me talk a lot about swim baits. When that water gets cold and they're eating forage, I don't know that there's a better bait, especially because with a swim bait, you can control the depth really easily based on the size of the jig head. So swim bait occupies my number 5 spot, but I want to complicate it a little and say a single swim bait or an Alabama rig style swim bait, okay? Both of these to me are in the same category. Some places you're allowed to throw an A-rig. Some guys don't like to throw an A-rig, but this can be a killer. But for places where you can't throw it or don't want to throw it, a single swim bait is unbelievable. When I'm power fishing, I like a little bit bigger bait. I like something like a 3/8 to a 4/3 size swim bait. I'm going to go with a swim bait that has a tab tail or boot tail. In that cold water, I don't want a swim bait with big, giant vibration. I want a subtle little tail movement. And you get that with this paddle tail or tab tail style. This happens to be a power bait power swimmer. This is 3/8. This is in a pro blue, pearl red color. And then on head sizes, I'll carry a lot of different jig head sizes, from a 1/4 ounce all the way up to a 1/2. And depending on the depth, I'll use a heavier head. This one right here is probably one of my favorite sizes. It's a 5/16. I throw the 1/4 a lot as well. And when you're rigging that swim bait, little tip, you always want the tail facing the opposite way of the bend of the hook. So look at that right there. My hook's facing up. I want my tail facing down. That's going to maximize the action of that swim bait. And again, the great thing about a swim bait is I can control it. So if the fish are suspended, I'll count it down to the level of the fish and I'll begin a slow reel. If the fish are on the bottom, I'll let it sink all the way to the bottom and I'll really creep it. So I can really control the level of this bait. I can mimic the forage. Again, slow. Forage is not darting, it's not jetting. The water's cold, forage is slow. Slow reel, a swim bait. There's my top 5. In another video, we're going to go over my top 5 finesse baits for the early winter period. But they are for sure my top 5 power fishing baits for this time of the year. Listen, it's cold, water's getting cold, the air is getting cold, but the fish will still bite. Learn those early winter locations. Use those 5 power fishing baits. I guarantee you're going to catch some big bass. Man, if you like this video, if you like these tips, do me a favor, stop real quick, hit the subscribe button. We're going to get new In the Shop videos to you every week. If you're already a subscriber with us, please take a second, tell a friend, tell your fishing buddy about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We got some great information coming. Good luck, good fishing. There's your top 5 early winter power fishing lures.